Okay, we are live.
Fantastic.
We'll give it just a minute here. Okay. Oops. All right, here we go. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining myself, Cam Dunlap, and my good friend, Mr. Josh Brown, for Strategy Lab number 4. Today is April 16th, 2020. We are in the midst of the COVID-19 shutdown, and we're here to try and help you get through this and come out on the other side stronger and able to take full advantage of the opportunities that this is going to present to us. So, hey, Josh, glad you made it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and excited to share some gold nuggets today. So looking forward to the session.
All right. And by the way, in case you're unfamiliar with Josh, he is the Chief Marketing Officer of our business, this business. He's been involved in real estate investing since he was a teenager, and he's a partner in the business. He's a great friend, and he's a super sharp guy, and that's why I asked him to join me on these. And so thanks, Josh. We're on number 4 strategy session. Number 4, Strategy Lab. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm going to give you a quick rundown. First, I'm going to give you a little state of the market as I see it. I do a lot of reading and studying all week long leading into these things. I do it anyway. And so I make some notes and have some things that I want to share with you here to give you sort of my take on what's happening as this unfolds. And then we'll be joined by a good friend whose name is Doug Fath. And he is with a company called Legacy Capital. He's the founder and partner at Legacy Capital. They are hard money lenders. We're going to have him join us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the hard money lending business right now, which I think will be useful for you guys to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll dive into your questions. Thank you for sending those. Those go to comments at realestatewealthnetwork.com. Comments, plural, at realestatewealthnetwork.com. Say it again, Josh.
I said we've got so many of them. I mean, there's tons and tons of questions as I'm looking through this inbox.
Yeah, and clearly there are many more than we'll ever get to. So if we don't get to your question, please don't be offended. We're just doing the best we can with the time we have. And believe me, the time we carve out to do this is it's taken away from you. Let me put it to you this way. I've been an entrepreneur since 1993. I don't think I've ever been as busy or worked as hard as I am right now. Do you feel the same way, Josh?
Absolutely. Yeah, I look around at, I see people bragging that they're on like a permanent vacation, locked in the house. What are we doing today? Coloring, doing paint, people learning how to paint or play instruments. And I'm like, where in the heck are they getting all this time? Because basically walk 3 feet to my office, work all day long nonstop in front of my computer while working, and then walk back out sometime in the evening when the sun's almost down. So I'm not sure where people are getting the time.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, so some of you guys know this, we're in the middle of building a house here in upstate New York, and Comrade Cuomo threw down the construction rule 2 weeks ago, and we're only allowed to have one guy working there at a time. So the whole process has slowed down.
Wow.
And it has my wife fit to be tied because we're living in it's adequate. It's a nice little, it's a very historic little building. It's called the Cooper Shop at one of the wineries here in town. It's about a 200-year-old building, but it's been redone and it's really cute, but it's tiny. And I am so grateful that I have this building, which is only a mile away, not even. I call it the car barn. It's sort of my giant man cave. I've got, garage full of cars, and I've got a big bar, 50-foot bar. Josh has been here many times. If we as a family didn't have this for me to go to work, and the 3 of us were crammed in that house all day, as it is, my wife and daughter are basically walking around with their hands at each other's throats. It's really bad. I mean, we got a case of the shut-ins right now. There's no doubt. And I'm so grateful that I have this space to come to.
Yeah.
All right. So what's happening? Some of my observations, lenders are certainly tightening up. They're frightened of, in particular, forbearance. So what they're really worried about is a new loan closing today and the borrower seeking forbearance tomorrow. That is a big fear. It's a real fear because basically, you know, the Fed and the news and everybody's saying, well, get a forbearance, just ask for a forbearance. You don't need to have any real, you know, hardship, just ask for a forbearance. And that is crushing the mortgage industry, in particular servicers. In fact, some servicers are actually being asked to buy back loans that they've agreed to do forbearances on, and they don't have the money to do it. And
Yeah.
so part of this whole bailout is they're talking about some sort of a bailout for servicers because it is putting an enormous strain on the mortgage business. And I think it will probably change permanently in some ways. I mean, clearly what we're seeing happen right now is the unfurling of America 2.0. We're going to come out of this thing different in so many ways. I mean, we could spend, Josh, you and I could spend an hour and a half just talking about that, the ways that we think we're going to change, or how our thinking is going to be different. Our customs are going to change, what we like and what we dislike. You've heard me talk about high density living, high density workspace, high density, like concerts and movie theaters and sporting events. High density is, we're going to have a problem with that as a society, maybe permanently, maybe for a long time. I don't know. But
Right.
clearly America 2.0 is unfurling before us. Some examples of lenders tightening. FHA now is, FHA haven't tightened their standards so much, but the underlying lenders have. Now, to get a 3.5% down FHA loan, most lenders have gone to a minimum 680 FICO. It went from 580 to 680. That's for the 3.5% down program. Just the other day, JP Morgan Chase on their conventional loans just went to 700 FICO and 20% down. So what we're seeing is a real contraction in the mortgage industry, which is exactly what happened after 2008. And in part, it happened again because of Dodd-Frank, or was exacerbated by Dodd-Frank. And so for the last 10 years, the only real free-flowing mortgage money in the marketplace has been government insured. So that would be FHA, VA, USDA. And so, I'm starting to see history repeat itself in a lot of ways. Is this going to be the same? No, clearly it isn't, but there are going to be a lot of similarities to the downturn in 2008. I do think for sure that this recession, and there is absolutely no doubt that we are headed into a very deep, very potentially very long recession, is real, and it is all around us. The jobless claims, the last round of jobless claims was another 6 million. I think we're going to be into the 20s in terms of unemployment by the time we get through this. And here's what's really shocking. Okay, so you probably know, if you've been on any of these strategy labs, that my hotel is closed. By the way, that hotel is like 1 mile that way. It is closed right now because there's nobody coming, and it just didn't make sense to continue to incur the expenses. Not to mention the fact that my employees were frightened. They didn't want to be in that environment. And so we elected to close. Now, I did get a forbearance with the lender, and I'm still working on them try to get them to forgive the interest, which they have not yet done. And believe me, they're going to. I just haven't leaned hard enough on them. I've got some other things that are really sucking up my time right now. But I don't have to make any payments for another few months. But the waiving the interest, I predict. I am determined to get them to do that. But where I'm going with this is, yesterday I found out one of my team members at the hotel, who makes about $500 a week when she's working there, is receiving $852 a week in unemployment right now.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. Plus the $1,200 helicopter money that's hitting as we speak. In fact, I know some people that have already seen it in their accounts. Yeah. I certainly won't, and many of you won't, because we exceed the income limits. So we're not, we don't get that. But I hope you do. I guess if you do, that means that you've got a ways to go in terms of building your income. And if you don't, well, then you're like me, and I don't resent that at all. I'd really, if I got it, I think I'd send it back, or I wouldn't cash it. But I think that It's a little troubling. I think what it's doing is it's creating a moral hazard. And
Right.
honestly, so we were planning to open April 17th, which is tomorrow. Clearly that's not going to happen. New York's on lockdown still, and most of the country still. I mean, I'm hearing little rumblings about the beginning of May. Maybe they start to loosen. So we went ahead and extended the closing date or the closure to a hopeful reopen date of May 1. Well, now what I'm really concerned about is whether or not my team will even come back to work. The
Right.
the 852 is through the end of July. So I'm saying, wow, if I'm inclined to reopen and I go to my team and they say, gee, we're scared, we don't really want to come to work, and besides we're being paid more to stay home, the only threat is that they might permanently lose their job, which means we have to go hire and retrain.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm trapped. I really do. And I know I'm not alone. A lot of employers now, look, the hotel is very different from my other business interests, but my hotel is very much like millions of other businesses across the US. So so if you have a business and you're experiencing something similar to this, I totally feel your pain. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I feel trapped. So I'll keep you up to speed on where that lands.
Cam, I
Back to
think that's
Go ahead.
that thought almost it annoys me that we've set it up so that people have to choose between the short-term gratification of a little extra money from the government or the long-term smart play of the long-term job that'll be there past July, right? And the government's put us in a position now where lots of people, good people, are having to make decisions based on that, and a lot of them are going to choose wrong. They're going to choose the short-term money, and I just hope that the good ones don't. And I think, as is typical of most things, the good ones make the right choice. And if that's me, and it won't be, but if that was me, I would take the job because of long-term stability, and hopefully everybody else does the same thing, or the right ones do.
I think they will too, but the added complexity is fear.
Yeah, it is. Right. Absolutely.
That's not typical, and it really makes this situation, I think, really unique,
Yeah.
and especially challenging. Um, I may elect to stay closed till the end of July. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
don't know what to do. I don't want to open the doors and because we're bleeding money, although I've taken it down to the bare minimum every month. So we open the doors, and all of a sudden those losses grow by 200, 300, 400%, and I'm not positive the business is going to be there to offset that.
Right.
And
Exactly.
then I have the issue with my employees making more by staying home and being fearful of coming to work. It's a challenging algorithm, is what that is. That is an algorithm. Anyway, so back to some of my observations relating to you and your business. Here's an iBuyer update. iBuyers are the instant buyers that have been around and have been sucking up market share in some of the bigger, the sort of the 200 largest MSAs, the major markets or market statistical areas. Most of them, I read about one that hasn't stopped, but all but maybe one have stopped buying. The way their model is built, they anticipated, markets acting differently as a way of offsetting risk, where one's booming and they're doing really well. Maybe they're not doing so well over here, and it all sort of leveling out. Well, what they never anticipated was a complete shutdown of all markets simultaneously and instantaneously. So all but just one that I know of, and it's Keller Williams, that's still buying, or claim they are shut down completely. And I do think that a number of them are probably never going to come back, especially the ones that are funded by hedge funds and venture capitalists. So, but get this though, I did not know this, but up till now, iBuyers accounted for 1% of the home purchases. Now that doesn't mean 1% of all homes. That means 1% of the transactional activity in the 200 major markets across the U.S. That's it, just 1%. I also just read that Zillow right now is sitting on 1,859 houses, totaling a value of $589 million that they can't sell. And I also continued reading some other articles about this. And what's happened is, because a lot of the iBuyers have canceled contracts with sellers and have screwed them up, sellers that had their property under contract with, say, Zillow, and that sale was how they were going to buy the house that they're committed to over here. So now Zillow pulls out and maybe gives them a little extra money for the nuisance, and they have been doing that, a few $1,000s. But now this transaction collapses because this one just did. And what is happening is consumer sentiment is shifting away from iBuyers. People are seeing them as risky and too big to, the whole, what we talk about is humanity. There's no humanity involved. They don't care.
Right.
Forbearance, I mentioned earlier, is crushing servicers. It literally could collapse the mortgage market. I think the Fed will bail it out before it happens, though. Was reading today about an absolute wave of landlord default that's coming, and that's in residential and commercial, that's coming due to non-payment of rent. So speaking of moral hazard,
right.
I mean, basically the whole, the rent is too damn high. Remember that guy a few years ago? That was actually a political party at one time.
Yeah.
That seems to be a sentiment across the nation among many, where they're just basically not paying their rent. And it's happening in commercial as well. So for example, Staples, Dick's Sporting Goods, and a whole bunch of other really big retailers are just literally have stopped paying their rent. And they're saying, look, the state government forced us to shut, so we're not paying our rent. And so it's really creating a massive amount of angst from very, very large commercial properties all the way down to little, mom and pop rentals like you and I might have. So, hey, we're live on Facebook. Put a comment in below and tell me, if you have a rental property, did you collect your rent on April 1st? I'd like to know that. I'm fortunate in that I did collect my rents on April 1st. And I wonder about May 1st. I really do.
Yeah.
There is a wave of landlord default coming as a result of this. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute. If you have a government-backed loan, the government has frozen any foreclosures on that. That would be backed by or purchased by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Penny Mae is the biggest one. Did you know Penny Mae owns more mortgages right now than any other secondary marketplace? I did not know that.
I had no idea.
But however, there's a whole bunch of mortgages out there that are not in that category. And even though they may be forbidden from foreclosing right now, that's going to get lifted and there's going to be big problems. So a lot of what we're going to see in real estate, I think, is still yet to come. I think that's sort of unfurling as well. So I mentioned the unfolding of America 2.0. I think the real estate market and where we're headed with this thing is also unfolding in a very big way. Also, I was doing some reading about real estate investment trusts and private syndications. These are non-listed, meaning they're not on, in general, this article was about non-listed, meaning not publicly traded REITs and syndications, where they are literally overwhelmed with redemption requests right now. So maybe you put $10,000 into a real estate investment trust or into a syndication, and you're fearful and you're saying, I'd like my money back now. And these syndications and REITs are in no position to settle these redemption requests. So that's another area that I think is interesting, and I'm watching closely. And then the last thing that I want to do, and I do expect Doug, there's Doug. Hey, how you doing, Doug? Oh, you're on mute, and I don't think I have you muted. Can we hear you?
Yeah, I'm doing
good. Okay, one last thing, and then we're going to jump into talking to you about the hard money lending business. I want to share a quick infographic. I came across this someplace. This we're not going to put on our blog because I don't know who holds the copyright to it, and I know it's not me. But if you have the ability to take a screenshot and you want to grab this, here, I'm going to share my screen right now. I want to show you this. It's kind of cool, and I think there's a little bit of a lesson in it. So, Josh, can you see my cursor? Can you see me
Yep.
pointing? Okay, excellent. Oh, I just made a boo-boo. Get rid of that. Okay. So anyway, what do I do, or what I want to be doing during this whole pandemic thing? Well, if you're in the fear zone, you're one of those toilet paper buyers. Hopefully, maybe you stop buying toilet paper. By the way, I went to Sam's the other day and I bought a thing of toilet paper this big. I was like so happy. I was like, yay. And they one per person now.
Yep.
Complain all the time, transmit my anger and fear related through emotions to others. So, you're kind of being angry around your family and your friends, forwarding all sorts of messages to others, and look at this, and see, I told you this, and by the way, I would also put in here abusing alcohol, drugs, or yourself in any way would fall into that fear zone, and I really, really hope that that's not where you are. Coming out of that is the learning zone. And this is something that we've been promoting here for weeks on these strategy labs, is now's the time to be learning and studying and expanding your mind. Binge watching Netflix is not a good use of your time right now. So please, so stop compulsively consuming things that harm me, like food, news, alcohol, things like that. If you've gained weight, and by the way, I stepped on the scale the other day, I haven't gained an ounce. So I'm doing okay. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Start letting go of things that are out of your control. Identify my emotions. Start to say, hey, I'm definitely acting out of anger right now, and identify that and maybe take control of it. Make myself aware of the situation, and think about the best way to act. Is what I'm doing and saying right now going to serve me and my loved ones? Good question to be asking yourself. Verify information before I go and share it. A lot of fake news out there getting shared around, and you don't want to be a purveyor of fake news. I sure don't. Acknowledge everyone is trying to do their best, and we're all in this together. That's the learning zone. And then the growth zone, which I hope you're in now, like Josh and Doug and I are, is where we're going to find our purpose. We're going to think of ways to help others, use our skills to service the ones in need. We're doing, my wife and daughter and I are doing all kinds of things to help folks out, show empathy, not only to myself, but others, live in the present and forget about the future, at least, for now. Keep myself emotionally happy and transmit hope, show gratefulness, find ways to adapt to changes, and practice calmness, patience, relationships, and creativity. This, I think, is something maybe if you're able to take a quick screenshot, you may want to grab. I certainly can't claim any credit for that, but I thought I'd share it because I think it's useful. All right, so moving right along, we are joined now by my good friend, Mr. Doug Fath. Doug, you and I have known each other, it's close to 10 years?
Yeah.
I think so. In fact, the first time I met you might have been at the same mastermind where I met Josh in North Carolina.
Three of us met at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. So real quick, just to give you a background, Doug is, he's been a real estate investor for, I don't know, many, many years. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'll let you tell the folks about yourself real quick. But today, in addition to doing investments in, opportunity zone properties, he's also a hard money lender working with investors. And that's why I asked him to join us, because I wanted to hear, his take, your take, Doug, on the market and hard money, and, any sort of changes, responses, reactionary, adjustments that you've made in your business. So tell the folks a little bit about yourself and what you're seeing out there.
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me on, Cam and Josh. As always, great to be with you guys. My background is on the investment and development side. I've been developing real estate for 15 years. I started out in affordable housing, got into student housing, and then multifamily and mixed use properties. And still have that business today. And then about 5 years ago, with a buddy of mine, started a private lending, hard money lending company And so I think especially right now with the changes that are going on, it's been interesting for me sitting on both sides of those businesses. One where I'm wearing my investor developer cap, the other where I'm wearing my lender cap, and seeing a lot of similarities as well as seeing some differences kind of depending on the side that you're sitting on. And so in particular in the hard money lending space, what we're finding is a lot of our competitors are just flat out not lending. And I think part of the reason for that is the source of their capital. And so I think if you're someone out there that's working with hard money lenders or looking for private capital, understanding where they get their money from is important. A lot of these lenders would lend it out and then they would go sell that paper to someone else. The problem is those buyers that they were selling your paper to, they're gone. Like liquidity has dried up, whether it was a lot of large companies that were doing that or smaller ones. Those guys aren't buying right now. And so that hard money lender that had money on the street, he can't recycle that. And so he can't originate, he or she can't originate any new loans. And then for the lenders that are lending, like ourselves, you're absolutely seeing a tightening up of lending criteria, right? So one, on loan to values, I think the biggest thing for us is, which we've always been a pretty conservative lender. So this is something we didn't think it was going to be a pandemic, but in terms of market cycles, we knew where we were at. We were preparing for this. And so the last 3 weeks, while people have been pulling back and not lending, we've been aggressive in terms of getting the word out there that we're still lending under the right conditions though, right? So, across the board, you're seeing hard money lenders want their borrowers to have more skin in the game than they did before. And you're going to see that in the hard money space as well as your conventional financing. We're seeing that on the investment and development side as well. And so I think the biggest things, lower loan to value, and they're going to want more skin in the game from borrowers.
Yeah, I'm seeing that on the, just in conventional lending for sure. So tell the folks a little bit about how you guys have changed your parameters, your underwriting, your rates. Have you at all? What are you guys doing in reaction to this?
Yes. So rate wise, we haven't really adjusted our rates too much. We've always have tended to be more on the higher end in the industry. And so our rates are the same. It's really more so, again, loan to value. So again, we've always been more on the conservative side, but even being more conservative now where, we would max out at a 60% loan to value. Now we're only in certain situations will we go up to 60%. We're more 50 to 55%. And then making sure that our borrowers have skin in the game. So we used to max out where if you were in that loan to value, you wouldn't have to bring money for, where now we want to make sure that they've got skin in the game. And then the other thing is that I keep telling our clients is, that deal that you were trying to buy at whatever number it was a month ago, if that deal comes around for that number, in my opinion, that's still not a good enough deal because of, and you were talking, I think, a little bit about this, Cam, as I hopped on. I think the trickle-down effect that you're going to see with housing prices because of the liquidity, because of a variety of things, I think that's further down the road as this plays out. Because I think, as you were saying, April 1st, I think when this first went down, real estate investors, I think everyone was just scared in terms of the unknown, but the immediate impact to a real estate investor around March 15th, there really wasn't an impact other than being scared, right? April 1st is typically when the first sort of impact came from the people that I've spoken to. For the most part, they've done pretty well with that. Yes, there's been more slow pays or no pays, but nothing crazy. To your point, this thing goes to May 1st to June 1st. You're going to start seeing a significant impact of that. And then I think that's going to trail down, right? If you think about sellers, it's been a seller's market, right? So when one buyer said, I'm not going to give you that number, they said, okay. They went to the next buyer and they got that number. And so that's going to stop now, but it's still going to take time for seller psychology to realize like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And that's not happening next week. That's going to take, probably a few months. And so
there's a lag.
Yep. They have to get beat up a little bit before they change their mind.
Yeah. And so and I love that chart that you were showing there, Cam, in terms of, like opportunity. At the end of the day, I feel opportunistic about this. I think there's going to be a lot of great opportunities, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. But I think for everyone, we're all going to experience a little bit of pain to get to that point. And as long as you've got the liquidity to do so, the right mindset to do so, there's definitely brighter days on the other side of that. But it's navigating the waters to get to that point.
So tell the folks a little bit how you guys may have changed the way you're doing your valuations. So if I come to you with a deal that I want to buy, and I can show you that it's, all I need is 50% loan to value to make this work. I've got some skin in the game. I've got the funds that I need to do the repairs, because we're talking about rehabbing here. Have you guys changed the way you put a value on that house, an after repair value on that house?
So what we've looked at is, hey, in our market for the types of loans that we're doing, our average loan size is about 250,000. We do loans up to 2 million, but our average loan size is 250,000. And so in that market, in the area where we are, if things, usually those areas are less impacted. And so if things do get bad, we feel maybe there'll be a 10 to 15% move off of that. And so for us, that's where we've lowered our loan to value across the board in those scenarios, just to account for that, but also communicating that to our borrowers and our clients as well. So they're building in enough margin for them. And look, if I'm wrong, if we're wrong, great. We're all going to make more money. Right. But planning for that and building that in now. And I've been surprised with the amount of, whether it's clients or prospects that I've spoken to that don't quite see that and are not including that sort of in their analysis right now. I'm really shocked at the amount of people that, again, think this is going to be a V-shaped recovery and, next month or, whenever it opens, like it's going to go back to normal. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that's the case, but I don't think so.
I don't see it either. By the way, Josh, you know this, and Doug, we do Q&A for a big part of these strategy labs from the folks. We give them a portal where they can send in their questions. And the number one asked question is, how do I adjust the after repair value? And there you just heard it from the hard money lender who's in the business doing deals right now, 10 to 15%. So if the comps are supporting $200,000, we're going to want to adjust that price down. 10% would be 20 grand, 15 would be 30. So now we're going to take that $200,000 after repair value that comps, sold comps took place prior to this pretty much. We're going to take that value down by 10 to 15% to give ourselves that extra margin.
Yeah.
And I think that's safe for now. And then we'll wait and see. We're going to watch the marketplace, because it might be in 6 or 12 months, we need to, adjust even more. But, every day that goes by, even though the number of transactions that are taking place on a daily basis are far fewer than they were, 60 days ago, we have new comps to look at. Right. So as time passes, there'll be new comps to look at just behind us that'll give us a better idea of where we need to be. But I think for now, and I appreciate your response, Doug, that a 10 to 15% adjustment is wise. Is that all that prices will adjust? Will they adjust more than that? Only time will tell. If history repeats itself, they will. But we'll see. We're in a different environment now than we were after 2008. And for one big reason, and that's demand. When we went into this, there was far greater demand for housing than there was housing available, which was really helping prop the market up. And I don't see that demand going away anytime soon. I do see people's ability to borrow going away, and I do see people needing more space because they're going to continue to work from home now forever. Right. But I don't see the fundamental underlying demand going anywhere. Do you, Doug?
No, I agree, which again, sort of coming out of this, I think there's going to be, a big opportunity. I'm still bullish on it. But I think we need to plan plan the dip, so to speak, or riding through that period. And, just also too, going back to values and values going down, just in terms of how things are tightening up. I didn't realize this, but I just learned the other day, we had a client that was selling a property. The buyer was getting a FHA loan. And in that scenario, and I'm hearing it's across the board now, that 90 minutes before they wire funds, they're calling the buyer's HR department to confirming they're still employed.
That's absolutely true.
How many deals are going to blow up or get lost at the last minute?
Especially in this climate, right?
And then that seller of the property, they thought this thing was as good as gold. It was done. They were, when they put that back on the market, they're going to want to get that thing sold quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, they're calling that day of closing VOE, and I'm seeing it. I just closed on a house a week ago, Tuesday. It was an FHA loan, and I was literally biting my nails right up to the minute that the closing agent sent me the email saying we closed, because the borrower was employed. Thankfully, he's a plumber, which is considered a critical activity. But I could just imagine the day before he gets laid off and the whole deal blows up. But it closed, and I was very thankful. Now I've got another house on the market in the same area that that's not seeing a lot of activity right now. So I decided, instead of lowering the price, which I'm preparing to do, I decided to have the listing agent change the listing to pay a 4% commission to the buyer's agent and 3% to the listing agent. So I've basically they didn't ask me. I told them, raise the commission to 7%, put 4% on the buyer's agent side, and make sure that it's in there so that when they do a search, they find that. And I'm hopeful that that'll incent agents to show and ultimately sell my house first, because there's, a bigger commission in it for them. And let's face it, that's, how the world works. So I'm seeing a softening. I expected this property to have multiple offers by now, because 60, 90 days ago, it would have. I had just put it on the market. And so I may be one of those sellers that has to come to the reality that I need to lower my price. The good news is right now the asking price is sitting at 4x what I paid for it. So I'm in a position to be willing to lower my price some without too much angst. Hey, Doug, anything else you want to mention, you want to bring up while you're here with us? I know you're a busy guy and I want to get you on your way. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think, again, this too shall pass, right? So it's awesome, the work that you guys have been doing and continue to do in terms of, educating the community and helping people through this time, because, again, it will pass and there'll be bigger and better opportunities on the other side of it.
Absolutely. That has remained my underlying message through all of this, is that, and this isn't speculation, this is my at least fourth major disaster between the recession and real estate collapse in the early 90s, .com bomb, 9/11, 2008, and this, I speak from hindsight. There's blue skies on the other side of this. Like take it down to a very localized example. A hurricane goes through and knocks the living crap out of an area. Right behind it is an economic boom in that same exact area. So, we're going to see that. We're going to experience that. We're going to live through that, and we're going to be able to profit from that. And that is, without a doubt, my underlying message. Doug, tell the folks how they can get a hold of you if they want to.
Yeah, if you'd like to get a hold of me, best thing would be you could go to our website at legacycapitalpa.com, or shoot me an email, which is just doug@legacycapitalpa.com.
Cool. Very good. Doug, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. Appreciate your willingness to come on here. I know you did it because we're friends, and I don't take that lightly. And good luck to you. Stay in touch. I'm very interested to hear how things continue for you there in your area. Primarily is southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Jersey, that area.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
So good. Let's stay in touch, and we'll talk again soon. And you're welcome to stay on, or you can pop out whenever you want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our next segment, and we're going to begin and finish the today's strategy lab with our Q&A. We do have, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation here, this call, whatever you want to call it, that we're loaded. And man, I mean that. We are loaded. So Josh and I went through, and we've, he picked the ones that he felt were, well, one of the things we do is we try to aggregate them. So, when a lot of people are asking similar questions, we try to say, okay, there's one that was asked 3 times. Let's make sure we address that. And by far and away, the one question that gets asked more than, well, 2 really, that get asked more than anything else are, what should I be doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And how the heck do I value a property when we're, all the balls are in the air right now? And I think we got a good answer to that. And we're going to address the what should I be doing right now very specifically. I know, Josh, you're going to touch on that. And I will too. I will say this though. If right now you're not making a ton of offers, well, I'm not gonna be upset with you. Under normal circumstances, if you were to say to me, gee, things aren't going like I'd like them to go, my first question to you would be, well, how many offers have you made in the last week?
Yeah. Because
that's what makes all the difference in the world. Well, if you're not making as many offers right now because we're shut in, right? I'm not. I promise I won't get on your case about that right now. But what I think you should be doing right now, at a minimum, is studying and learning. And the fact that you're here with us, I think, says a lot about your willingness to do just that. That's what I'm doing. Well, I'm spending, it's funny. I'm working about 12 hours a day, right? So I'm up and roaring by 7, although sometimes, and Josh will verify this, sometimes I'm up at 3 a.m. and he'll see an email with a timestamp on it at like 3:23 in the morning.
The early morning for Cam.
Yeah. That's just sometimes how I roll. I try to go to bed early, but I'm up and roaring by 7 o'clock, and I don't slow down until about 7 o'clock when I head home, which is 1/8 of a mile that way, and have dinner with the girls, and then just try to decompress and be with them for a couple hours before we hit the rack. And that's 7 days a week. I am just, and so what I'm doing with my time, if you're interested, is I spend about half my time firefighting, and that, you can imagine what that looks like. And we're going to talk about SBA loans and PPP and EIDL. We're going to get to that today. And just dealing with, challenges and operational stuff that is just, it's like, I honestly, when I look back at my inbox, I'm like, oh no, what do I got now? I look at my inbox just out of a small amount of fear. So I'm spending about half my time firefighting, about maybe 35% of my time creating and trying to be a thought leader and doing things like this and other things. I've got projects I'm working on. There's a lot that I'm working on. And then the balance of my time, which is maybe 15, 20% of my time, I'm spending studying, reading, listening, and doing exactly what you're doing by being here right now, because it's that important. And so, here I am, I'm certainly not a kid. I'm at a point in my life where I don't have to do anything, and I'm working harder than I have in probably 20 years. But I got to tell you, I'm loving it. I am super motivated. I come vaulting out of bed and I'm like, come on, bring it. I'm ready. Come on. And
that's I got to turn that little clip into a meme or something. That was great just now. But I would say this, Cam, it's because it's in your DNA. You know what I mean? I saw this. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I saw it and it really reminded me how true it is. And when people say things like, I'm not sure what to do. Where do I start? What do I do? Those are great questions. It shows that you have desire to do something. But a lot of times we make excuses right the second after we say those questions, right? It's like, I just don't know where do I start? Because I don't know where to start. I'm not going to go anywhere, right? That's what runs through people's head. Since I don't know where to start, I'm not going to move. Well, the reason that you're not moving is fear. We've talked a lot about fear today. And you know what? You've experienced fear over the last 4 or 6 weeks, or however long you've been shut in. We've been shut in officially 30 days here in Charleston, South Carolina. I have a ticker up on my whiteboard every day. The number changes. And fear is one of two things. Fear, when you see it, can stand for forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And it's up to you to decide which version of fear you're going to be. Are you going to forget everything and run? Are you going to turn to Netflix and sit on your butt and get fatter during the next 2 or 3 or however many weeks we have here? Or are you going to turn to books and education and positive affirmations and do and take actions that move you and your business forward? Every one of us, you, me, all of us here, have the ability to choose whether we close up shop and run, or we face it and rise. And those of us who decide to face it and rise will be the ones who enjoy the sunny side that's going to come after this that everyone keeps talking about. And it's not just me saying that. If you look back at history, anyone who closed up shop and ran never made it, right? All great businesses, a lot of the best entrepreneurs, they all faced life things that they went through, and they faced it and they rose because of it. And this is just our chance to face it and rise.
Yeah.
And not make excuses for ourselves.
My observation is the biggest fortunes are made during times of uncertainty and the aftermath that follows. I can personally attest to that. In each of those sort of, disasters that I spelled out a minute ago, following that, I made a fortune, and then made another fortune, and made another fortune. And I absolutely guarantee that I am going to make another fortune in the aftermath of this. How exactly, what are the exact things I'm going to do? I don't know. I have some thoughts and ideas, but I'm sort of letting that all unfurl. One of the things that, one of the reasons why maybe you are asking, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Is because you're fearful that you might do the wrong thing or fail, right? Well, there's a saying that you only truly learn from your failures. You don't learn from your successes. You learn from your failures. So my suggestion is start failing now. Fail like crazy. Be a failure fiend, right? There's a great book by John Maxwell, Failing Forward Fast. That's what this is all about. So if you're asking, what do I do? What do I do? Stop asking that question and just start doing the things that you feel like are going to move you forward. Looking at motivated sellers, looking at buyers, what they're buying, looking at what is going on in, on the foreclosure websites. There's all kinds of foreclosure websites out there. In fact, Josh, when you're taking a question, I'll run out in the other room. I have a list of them. I'll give you that list. Just start looking at the market. And if you're, concerned about making a mistake, let it go. Get excited about making a mistake, because when you do, there's no question that you're moving in a good direction. You're going to make mistakes, and no one is going to hold you. No one's going to doubt your desire or your ability when you make mistakes. And anyone who does, you should fire, and they should be out of your life. Now, that may be a little hard to do if you're shut in with someone who's doing that, but that's just a whole nother thing. All right. So let's dig in. I got one here. It was from Cindy Schaefer. This one, Cindy's asking about the SBA programs, the CARES Act. And let me just give you a little quick synopsis of this, okay? And this was some of the firefighting I was doing, although I've gotten my applications in, and so I can breathe a little on that, but then, the next fire starts raging. Basically, there are 2 programs out there that are available to us as business owners. And by the way, if you own a business or you're an independent contractor, you qualify. The PPP is what they call the Paycheck Protection Program, and it's designed specifically for employers who have employees who they have retained or will bring back. And when you do, you basically take your payroll records, you put that together in an application, and then if you take 75%, and then you base the loan amount that you're asking for from SBA is based on your payroll expenses during a set period of time. you ask for 2.5 times that. And then as long as 75% of that money is spent on payroll, keeping your people employed, it's forgiven. And then the other 25% you can spend on rent or mortgage interest or utilities. And so I applied for a PPP loan for this business. So for example, if you call my office and you talk to Samantha, or you talk to Brittany, or you talk to Carrie, or, I have a team of people that are on my payroll. And so I'm hopeful that that comes through, and then that money will clearly and very easily get spent 75% on payroll and 25% on those other expenses, rent and utilities. Now, what that does is it gives us a little breather, because, our revenue is way, way down, as you might anticipate. And so that gives us a little breather where we can let the bank account heal a little bit while we're using this other separate account. You don't want to commingle those funds to pay payroll, pay the rent, and pay utilities.
Right.
So I have applied for that. And the one thing I said when I go to my email inbox, I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at it, but there's the one thing I want to hear from Wendy Daines. Wendy Daines at the local bank that I did the submission through. I'm waiting to get an email from her that says, you're approved. And I do expect that to come any minute now. So that's one program. The other is called the EIDL, and that's the Economic Impact. I forget what it stands for, but it's EIDL. Yeah. That's a straight up loan that at the moment, none of it's going to be forgiven, but it's at a 3.75 interest rate. You have a year before you need to start making payments on it, but none of it's forgiven. And, I look at that and I think, and if you do the EIDL, as long as they'll give you an immediate influx of cash of $1,500 per employee up to $10,000. I did that for the hotel. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, why didn't you do the PPP for the hotel? The money's forgiven. The reason is because I don't have my payroll. My team is not there. I do have my general manager and my engineer, who are, general managers basically watching over the business and the engineers watching over the building. So I have very, very limited scaled down payroll. But if I took my payroll numbers and then 2.5 times that, there's no way I'd spend 75% of that on payroll right now because my team's not there. And frankly, given the things we talked about earlier, I don't know when they're going to be back. So I elected not to apply for a PPP there. And by the way, 2 weeks ago when I was doing this, the rules were you weren't allowed to apply for 2 PPPs. So the same controlling entity, which is me in this case, in both those businesses, the rules were very clear that you couldn't apply for 2 PPPs. Well, then they relaxed them a little bit, and they're saying, well, you can apply for up to $500,000. So if you can apply for a second PPP, as long as the 2 combined or 3 combined don't exceed that $500,000. Well, I still didn't do it because I don't have payroll to pay back. Right. And I may not take any of the money on the EIDL. The 10 grand that's forgiven. So great. Love to get that. That would help, the bank account. The other up to I forget, several $1 million. The last thing I want to do is load more debt on this hotel deal. It's, I have a mortgage. I don't want more debt. The last thing I want to do is come out of this thing buried in debt that, I didn't want, maybe needed, but didn't want. I'm trying to solve my problem without incurring more debt. So the local Industrial Development Association here, or agency, I forget, IDA, the Steuben County IDA, I'm in very close touch to the guy that runs that because I've worked with him very closely over the years on a number of projects. Well, they just announced a loan program yesterday, low interest loan program. And I replied and I said, hey, Jamie, thanks, man. Love what you do. Appreciate your work. Keep it up. You're clearly a leader in this situation. And I'm not going to take advantage of your program because the last thing I want to do is borrow more money. And he came back and said, I understand. Nobody really does, but we had to throw something out there. Yeah. And so we'll see. We'll see. I think for me, the SBA thing is the PPP is super important for this business, the Real Estate Wealth Network. Now, for you with a small business, maybe you're the only one that's on the payroll. You're an independent contractor. You pay yourself. Have a conversation with your accountant because you may be able to do a PPP for yourself, for your own business. Even if you're a sole proprietor, you may be able to do a PPP and recover some of your payroll that you're not receiving now, or that your revenue that stopped coming in as an independent contractor. I am positive, I just read that independent contractors are qualified and can apply for the PPP. So
I've heard the same thing. And just to give everybody a website to go check out, COVID19relief.sba.gov is a site you can go to. That's COVID19relief.sba.gov. It tells you how to complete the form, how you qualify, if you qualify, and we're no expert on the completion of those forms, but certainly we're both going through the processes now, and if you qualify, then you should reach out and see what you can get there.
Very good. So go ahead, Josh. You go next, and then I'm gonna step away for just a second and grab that list of foreclosure websites that I put together just the other day. Go
Perfect, because the question I have next will be great for that. This question is from Howard Curtis. Howard writes in and says, you wanted to know, I'm trying to paraphrase here, you want to know what I need to know to start moving forward now. Well, the question I have is, where do I start? If I'm starting from square one, what do I do? And Howard, I'm going to roll back. Cam and I just sort of stood on our soapbox for a minute or two talking about, you just need to start taking action. And I realize you might be thinking, Josh, what action do I need to take? And here's what I would say. You need to start contacting motivated sellers. So if you don't already have a subscription to the Motivated Seller Data Feed, get in there. You can go to realestatewealthnetwork.com and you can get a subscription to the Motivated Seller Data Feed, or the Vacant House Data Feed, or the Absentee Owner Data Feed, and you can start contacting sellers. And you need to start having meaningful conversations with these sellers. What do you say? Well, inside those data feeds, we have scripts. They're simple. Basically, you're going to say, my name is Howard. I'm looking to buy a house in your area and was wondering if you'd be interested in a cash offer. You wait. You pause. The first to speak loses. You've heard that before with negotiations. You wait. Let them answer. Yes, I'd be interested in a cash offer, or no, I wouldn't be interested in a cash offer. And then you can go from there. Great. Well, let me run some numbers. I'll give you a call back, give them a time, set an appointment so that it's more rock solid. And then you can call them back and ask them questions about their house to figure out what's going on, and you can get all the details so that you can construct an offer. And you can we have an offer generator built into our systems like iFlip, and you can use the offer generator to go and see what you need to make on this offer. And then let's take Doug, who was our guest earlier, his information into account, where he's saying, the after repair values, he's looking at a 10 or 15% downgraded on those values coming up here. So you might want to apply some of that too. But what's the first thing you need to do is start talking to sellers, because you have nothing to do if you don't have sellers that want to sell. Okay. So first thing you do, start talking to sellers. Go to motivatedsellerdatafeed.com, vacanthousedatafeed.com. We've set up trials. So if you don't already have a subscription through one of our programs, you can try it out at a very reasonable price. And of course, you can cancel anytime. There's never contracts or anything like that. But what I would say is this, for everyone out there who's going to be contacting motivated sellers right now, and you should be, if you're watching this video on Facebook Live, the second it's over, start calling sellers. When is now the time to start? It's right now. You need to start calling them now. Don't wait till tomorrow. And then tomorrow something's going to come up and you're going to wait till Saturday. And then something's going to come up and you're going to wait till Monday. Just start now. Quit making excuses and start making phone calls. Okay. But what you need to focus on is what people really want. Right? And what do they want right now? They want cash. People need cash. Think about all the folks who are sitting at home who might have been a motivated seller data feed person on the motivated seller data feed. Now they are going on 30X days not being at work, no paycheck perhaps. They're going to need cash now more than ever. So the fruit on the tree is ripening fast, and you can be the one to pull it off. But you got to make a phone call and you got to start those conversations, or nothing's going to happen. So there you go, Howard. That's the first thing you need to do. And for those of you who aren't having enough, Cam said earlier, I won't yell at you if you're not making offers, but we will be very saddened if you don't start having more meaningful conversations with sellers.
Nailed it. Okay. Foreclosure websites that I'm going to suggest you be watching right now. Now understand that these are on market deals. So there's naturally going to be a greater amount, although lesser today than say 60 days ago, but a greater amount of competition where with the motivated seller data feed, you'll see things like notice of default, which gives you an indication that the seller is headed into foreclosure long before their house ever ends up on one of these websites. However, these are good to watch just to sort of see the rising tide, and you'll see that some are, a little more, they have more opportunities in some areas than others. So there's Hubzu, HUBZU.com. Grab a pad and pen and write these down, Hubzu.com. There is auction.com, which, that's a no-brainer. And both of these websites are offering bank foreclosures in an auction, a silent auction format. There is the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac websites, homepath.com and homesteps.com. Those are Fannie and Freddie, respectively, homepath and homesteps.com. Then there's Penny Mac. So, a lot of folks, and frankly, I've known about Penny Mac for a long time, but I didn't realize just how big a secondary market they are, and they're going to have a ton of foreclosures too, maybe more than Fannie and Freddie because they're bigger. Penny Mac is bigger than Fannie and Freddie. That is Penny Mac, PENNYMAC .res.net. So Penny Mac, PENNYMAC.res.net is where you're going to find their foreclosures. Then another one that is interesting, and it's, it's some areas better than others. These all have sort of that sort of thing, a tendency, is one called Xome, XOME.com, XOME. And with any of them, you can set up alerts, and you can do the same thing with the motivated seller data feed naturally, but you can set up an alert. So if there's a new property in your area, whichever, whatever area you designate, you'll receive a notification of that. So there's lots more of them, but those are the ones that are of particular interest to me. Actually, two more I want to give you. HUD Home Store, that's HUD Foreclosures, FHA Foreclosures, HUDHOME Store, STORE.com, HUD Home Store. And then there is also VA.gov, that's Veterans Administration, VA.gov. So that's a pretty good list for you to be keeping an eye on and begin to sort of see the rising tide that I think is imminent.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. I'll take a question here.
Go for it.
Ruth said, how do you find buyers? Well, my tool of choice is going to be the cash buyer data feed, although I will suggest that you keep your ear to the ground because we're about to roll out something very interesting. And the timing is really interesting considering the market. So right now we offer the cash buyer data feed, which is known cash buyers, and you can look at ones that have made multiple purchases, and the data in there spans back 12 months. So anybody who's paid cash for a property that isn't an owner occupant and that isn't a bank, we spend a lot of time and energy filtering this information so that we get you just those investors, and in particular the ones that are buying or have bought more than one property over the last 12 months. They're easy to filter and they're of particular interest. But keep your ears to the ground for a new tool we're about to release. In fact, we're in beta as we speak on that right now, and I would expect something to come of that in the next couple of weeks.
It's perfect for the market right now, what people are really going to need to start doing more deals. So I'm excited about it. And Ruth, I will throw in one thing. I think her name was Ruth.
Yes.
One little guerrilla marketing strategy that you might try when you can actually get out on the road again is like a reverse bandit sign situation. If you don't know what that is, it's like taking a bandit sign, an 18 by 24 sign, and handwriting on there, 3-2 fixer, must sell now, blah, 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 and your phone number, and stick it in the area where you're trying to buy houses. And you'll notice the people who call that are folks looking to buy deals. They're investors. In fact, every time I drive by and I see one that's handwritten and it says, must sell now, please call, need quick sale, I call it because they're looking for buyers, right? And I'm a buyer. So you can try that too. You're not gonna be able to do that today if you're in an area that's locked up and not letting you drive around. And I'm not sure that that qualifies as essential work, but that's a strategy that's worked since I got in this business when I was 18 years old, and it still works today.
Ruth had a follow-on question. How do I use bird dogs when we're sheltered in place? That's a tough one. Although speaking of essential, real estate became essential nationwide in the last week. And even New York has clamped down as we are here, thanks to Comrade Cuomo.
Every time you say that, I get a smirk on my face. I apologize for that, but it's
yeah. Well, that's because you pity me. I know. But he also agrees that real estate is essential. So if you're looking at a house that happens to be listed, well, the realtor can show you, and you can get in there. They can get in there. And by the way, I read a thing that was kind of cute. It was a realtor that said, oh, my new qualifying question when I'm talking to a buyer and I'm showing them a house is, would you be willing to be quarantined in this house? Could you see yourself quarantined in this house? I thought, that's funny. Maybe not, but all right.
And one thing I'll point out on that also is, Ruth, remember, all going through this. I mean, look at us. We're on Zoom right now, live on Facebook. And this is not something we did before 4 weeks ago, right? And so we're adapting using new technologies to stay front and center with you guys. And so are buyers. Do things like have them do a FaceTime, set up a Zoom so you can watch it on there if you don't want to give out your phone number. I mean, there's lots of things you can do to see inside somewhere that's real time that can at least give you more information. That's not going to happen. That doesn't take away your need for most bird dog situations, but it might some.
And, that brings the humanity back into it. On Easter Sunday, we had family Zooms. We did a couple of them. I'm doing, Zoom cocktail hours with friends. And we did our team at the Real Estate Wealth Network, our management team meeting this morning. We did it on Zoom. We hadn't seen each other's faces in weeks. So it
feels good to see their faces,
Yeah.
So.
And, I used to sort of loathe the idea of having my video turned on and being on a video chat, because I don't know, I guess, some kind of self-consciousness thing going on. And you know what? I am so beyond that. I could care less. So, it's amazing how our attitudes are changing. Okay. Jumping back into it, Michael, he said, slow moving on properties because of funding. I'm looking right now for a buy and hold with no money down or very little at least. So speaking of rising tides, what we're going to have is a rising tide of people who want to own a home but who have damaged credit. All this forbearance is going to play out in the form of a ton of foreclosures. All these job losses are going to play out in a ton of foreclosures. And you might say, well, wait a minute, the job losses are temporary. They're going to come back. Some are, some are not. Let me give you a quick example of that. Cisco Foods, I'm not positive they're the largest, certainly one of the largest food distribution companies in the world. We buy food from them at the hotel because, we have food service there. And a very, very good friend of mine is the sales rep in this area. He lost his job. He was not laid off. They're going to find a way to do without him. Cisco at the Syracuse hub has laid off, I want to say something on the order of 400 people in the last 3 weeks. They are not going back to work, and they were highly paid jobs. These are like, six-figure type, $120,000 a year jobs. They're gone because what's happening is companies are realizing they're right sizing. That's really the term that sums it up. They're realizing they can get the job done, maybe not quite as warm and fuzzily, with far fewer people and far less overhead. And right now they have no choice. And so by the things we're doing as a result of having no choice, we are changing permanently. Yeah. So my point is, we're about to enter a phase with just bazillions of people who are out of work and who end up with damaged credit. So selling on lease options and agreement for deed and things like that is going to become a very big deal again. Now, that's not to say, Michael, you shouldn't rent this house. My point is that's coming, and you might elect to, instead of renting the house, sell it on a lease option because it's just easier to manage. You do run the risk of the buyer buying, however. So as far as funding your deal, this little or no money down buy and hold rental property, to do that right now, what you need is a motivated seller who's willing to carry back. Okay, so here's a stat that I learned this morning. I think you'll find this interesting. So we have a software tool called the Private Lender Data Feed, and Cheryl, our team lead for our development team, is on the management meeting, and she said, we're noticing a decline in the number of private lenders because, on every update, we add the new ones. And there are fewer new ones now than there were, over the last, say, 3, 4, 6 months. So what that tells me is private lenders have pulled back, and lenders in general have pulled back. Right. But what that tells me is that there's going to be more seller carryback happening now as well. So, and that's a big part of the private lender data feed is you're able to filter on seller carrybacks. And you might say, well, what do I need to do that for? If someone carries back a mortgage on the house they sell, yes, they're a private lender, but they didn't really write a check. They sort of acquiesced. Or maybe that was their goal for, tax purposes or whatever. But, so my point is, I think we're going to see a dip in private lending for a while, but then that's going to explode again because of the rates as low as they are and people looking for other investment vehicles other than the stock market. The stock market, if you didn't think it was volatile before now, you sure do now.
Right.
So what you need, Michael, is a motivated seller who's in a position to take a payment from you. Maybe they own it free and clear. Maybe there's an underlying mortgage. And so, they become your private lender. So you don't need to go find a bank or a private lender who's going to write a check. Instead, you find a private lender who's willing to wait for their money. That's what we're getting at. That's the difference between someone who writes a check, a private lender that writes a check, and a seller who carries back, who is technically a private lender, but they did that because they either wanted to or they felt they had to. Mm-hmm. Okay? So good question. Josh, go ahead. You grab one.
Yeah. I had a question here from Pat Creer, and he asked a similar question.
Hey, Pat.
But I just want he said, does the lack of some buyers being able to get loans make lease options a viable option in some cases? I know changing markets often dictate exit strategies. And that last part is absolutely true. Your exit strategy is going to change depending on what options are available to sellers, to buyers, and so forth. But, depending on the situation, absolutely, lease option could be a viable option for the deal.
Damage credit.
Yeah, to damage credit. I mean, that's the thing with all this stuff. And I keep trying to remind some friends, family members of mine who ask me, what they're asking me to, play soothsayer a little bit and look into the future and tell them how, what's going to happen this time next year. And I just keep telling them the muscle that we need to be practicing on strengthening the most is pivoting, right? We need to get good at pivoting because we don't know what exactly 6 months is going to look like. But if we've developed the ability to pivot, it doesn't matter. We're going to be able to turn, look at our viewfinder and say, okay, well, here are the opportunities. Let me take advantage of those. And then maybe we have to pivot again and say, okay, well, here are these opportunities, and they look a little different than those opportunities did. But I'm able to pivot and take advantage of those. And so, Pat,
over the years, I can add that it's become abundantly clear to me that we as investors need to change the strategies we're utilizing and we're focused on with the opportunities the market presents to us at any given time. And the market is cyclical. You've heard me say that a million times. It's like the pendulum in a grandfather clock. And, we're now off the stop. We were pegged against the seller's market stop. We're off the stop. And I think that pendulum is certainly going to start swinging the other way. So absolutely, we need to change our strategy and our thinking to a degree as a result of that. And by the way, to your point on pivoting, Josh, I was thinking a good sort of a metaphor to use to describe that is, have you ever been headed down the highway and you just were sort of your eyes glazed over and you just drove right by your exit? Yeah. And then you regretted it because you couldn't, you don't want to make an illegal U-turn, and the next exit isn't for quite a ways.
Yeah.
Now's the time to not, be complacent, sort of zoned out. That's what we used to call it in school. We'd say, oh, look at you. You're all zoned out. You're just sort of like, you're not even blinking. You're just staring at the wall. No, because the exit, your pivot point is coming at some point in the very near future. Don't miss it. Don't miss that exit, because everybody else is going to keep going that way, and you're going to go and head the other direction. Give you an example. When I'm down in Florida at my place down there, my mom lives in Vero Beach. I head north to go to Vero Beach. If I miss the Fort Pierce exit to get off, I have to go all the way to Yeehaw Junction. It's 35 miles.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway. All right. Let me grab one here. Kevin, you are up. Maybe I missed it, but I want to know what your funding actually looks like and what your buyers are looking for. Okay, so Kevin, I do have a huge pool of buyers, but they're not ones that I take your deal and send it into. That we don't do. It's too complicated. We looked at it. There's just a kind of relationship there that is maybe bordering on brokerage. And so I'm not going to take your deal and send it out to my buyers list necessarily. There are a couple of minor, teeny tiny exceptions to that. And if you're a mentorship student, you know what I'm talking about. Now, your question about funding, what we do, our no-fee funding, which is not too good to be true. We literally fund our deals for our clients on a daily basis. And by the way, we are still funding deals right now in this pandemic. What we do, our specialty is transactional funding, same day, next day transactional funding for your wholesale deals. So for a buy and hold or anything like that, you're going to want to look to another source. And I've been saying for years, and I'm going to continue to say, private lenders. We want to stay out of the banks, and it just got a good bit harder to even hope to borrow from a bank, at least as an investor, because remember that non-QM, that's non-qualifying mortgages, those went away 3 weeks ago or more, literally no such thing anymore. Non-QM mortgages, done. And that's investor funding. That's oddball situation, got lots of money in the bank, but not enough income to really cover it. Non-owner occupied, stuff that is non-conforming or non-qualifying. So that makes it an unbelievable case for private lenders. Now, Kevin had a follow-on of that, and he says, I find a lot of vacant land in the motivated seller data feed, and there are parcels of land in there certainly, and I find that some are zoned for development. Do you fund something like that? No, that'd be a long-term, type loan where you're making payments for years. That is not what we do. We do same day, next day transactional funding up to $1 million with absolutely no fees whatsoever. That type of funding you will absolutely pay for. And so that there again, I'm going to suggest, at least for the time being and probably for the foreseeable future, private lenders are your best resource. All right, go ahead, Josh, you take one.
Cool. This is from Jeff L. He asked, are you guys doing anything or saying anything different in your marketing during this time? And I would say, yes, absolutely. If you think about yourself, you're not going to buy anything that's not going to work during this quarantine. In fact, look at how all businesses are marketing right now. This is a time in which no one's ever experiencing like this before. It feels sort of like every day something shifts a little bit. So your marketing needs to be very to the date when you're talking to sellers. So say things like mention COVID-19 in your postcards, stuck in your house under quarantine, but need to get out fast, need cash for your house fast. We can give you cash even during the quarantine. Those types of comments and conversations are what you need to be having with your sellers. And doing so erases the big question they have in their head right now, which is, or one of the big questions, which is, I wonder if they can still do this even though the economy's shut down, the government's, make everybody stay inside their house. We're all under quarantine. Everyone's wondering, yeah, but can they still do that now? So you want to answer the question right up front. Don't let them decide you can't and just not call you. You want to answer it for them right up front and tell them, we're still buying houses even under quarantine. Give me a call today and get cash quickly. What they want is cash now. So the best solution that you could offer someone is, and by the way, if you could find a way to do this, you'll have contracts lining up on your desk, is how can you give them cash now and let them stay in their house for the next 30, 60, or 90 days? Can you find a way to do that? Can you find a way to provide it? Because that's exactly what they want and need. They want cash now, but they don't want to have to move during quarantine. So what can you do? How can you solve that problem? Finding the solution to that, or getting as close as you can, even if it's just cash now, is going to get you closer to those sellers calling you back. And I will say this, when you're writing your marketing or you're talking to sellers, there are two questions that you need to be answering. Those two questions that you need to answer are, A, what are the problems my customers are having right now? Or one, what are the problems my customers are having right now? And two, how can I solve them? And make sure that your marketing is answering those two questions. The more you do that, the more you're going to be able to resonate with sellers right now, and the more likely they are to call you.
And you'll find there's a common theme. You'll start to hear the same things over and over again, and that'll give you directions to what the objections, if you will, that you need to overcome.
That's right.
All right. Here's one from Tom. Says, does a land contract have to conform with the SAFE Act, right? So the SAFE Act predates the Dodd-Frank Act, but basically if you're engaged in seller financing, you may want to cover yourself and have what's called an MLO or an RMLO, residential mortgage loan originator. So that requires a license. You may want to have them pay a nominal fee to have them pre-qualify your buyer, put the documents together so that you're the one that is the seller and the one that's actually carrying back the loan, but the MLO, the mortgage loan originator, the professional, is handling the documentation and the qualifying of the buyer. Listen, I'm going to suggest you do that. Certainly if you're doing seller financing where you're giving your buyer the deed, on a land contract or a lease option, I think that's kind of in the gray area. I'm probably not going to use an MLO for a lease option or a land contract, but if I'm going to provide the deed, if I'm going to do a full straight up seller financing where the deed is conveyed or granted from me to the buyer, then I'm definitely going to have an MLO involved just to make sure that I'm compliant. I still hope, who knows, but I still hope that Dodd-Frank gets repealed, and maybe this situation and all of the unintended consequences may show themselves, and maybe that happens, over the next few years. I don't know, but it's a good question. Glad you asked it. And a mortgage loan originator is the answer, and they're everywhere. They're in every state, and they're already accustomed to serving in this way and have a nominal fee that they charge to do that. And frankly, you can have the buyer pay it. Have the buyer pay for that. I'll do one more here. I'll jump on one more. Hold on, let me just mark that one as done. Bobby. Virtual wholesaling and scaling into new markets. If your local markets are not yielding the results you're looking for, documents, etc. LLC. Okay, a couple points on this. Number one, if you already have an LLC or a corporation in the state where you reside, you don't need another one to go do business in another state. You may need to register your LLC or corporation in that state as a foreign entity doing business. And, there's, pardon me, a nominal fee for that might be a couple $100. That'll come up when you get to your first closing and the closing agent says, you're not registered, so I have to charge you this tax, and you quick go get registered before the closing. And believe me, we've helped our clients in that situation where we were funding the deal. We've said, hey, quick, go do this. You'll save a bunch of money.
Yep.
As far as documents, purchase and sale agreement, I would look to use the local realtors agreement. That's going to be the one that's locally approved, and it's going to have all of the items in it that are important in that particular market. That's a great way to sort of ensure that you're, using a document, A, that your closing agent's going to recognize, and B, that covers all the bases that are important in that particular market. A couple other suggestions on this. What I know is working right now, a couple things. I'm involved with Josh as well in several different masterminds, and we get together. Over the last couple of weeks, we've gotten together in a couple different masterminds using Zoom. And what I know is working very well, cash offers are now working really, really well, and in particular in smaller towns. So if you live in, Los Angeles, go east into the smaller towns. If you're looking to scale into other markets, focus on areas where, you might have in the vicinity or within the county, maybe 100,000 people or less, I think is a good metric to sort of use. And I think you'll find that those areas have been overlooked by most of the competition. Certainly the iBuyers aren't interested, and they're gone anyway, at least for now, and hopefully maybe for the long haul. But they're largely overlooked by smaller investors as well. And you'll find that that those sellers are not and have not been conditioned to believe that there's 5 buyers that are going to fight over their house, especially now. So smaller towns, cash offers, we know through my own activities and what I'm hearing from other, high volume, players in the marketplace, it's working well in smaller towns. Go ahead, Josh.
Cool. This question is from Serge. It's 2 parts. The first, I'm going to paraphrase because he wrote a pretty good explanation paragraph. But essentially, he has iFlip to help manage his business and automate the process of lead generation and deal flow. And he's noticed recently that he's starting to get an uptick in leads coming through his site. And he's wondering, did we do anything on our side that changed? Did we change anything in terms of the SEO with iFlip? And the answer is we didn't do anything new. It's just more than likely your website is now gaining traction within your search terms. And this is what naturally happens when websites get age and you create content that drives to them. He said he's been doing some posts and driving back to the page. So all those links coming from the Facebook posts that you're making is probably helping. So I just wanted to tell you that, Serge. We haven't done anything specific to change the SEO parameters on your iFlip website.
Let me add to that. I'm seeing that as well with my iFlip account. And I think another reason, in addition to what you just described, Josh, because I'm certain that what you just described is valid. Another reason is there's more motivated sellers today than there were a month ago.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So that's a good thing, and just figuring out how you can turn those sellers into closed deals. The second question was, once the default iFlip autoresponder sequence is completed, what do you recommend we do with these leads if they haven't contacted us yet? And he lists a couple things. We don't have their phone numbers, so should we continue emailing? My answer is yes. Until a buyer says stop emailing me, a seller says stop emailing me, I'm going to keep emailing them. So maybe you create more messages in your autoresponder that go out over a long period of time. And one specific message might work really well. I call them I don't really have a catchy name for them, but emails that grab people by the shirt and rip them off the wall, pull them into the conversation. So you don't want to write an email that looks like anything you've written before. Maybe your subject line for an email that goes out, 10 months after you've talked to a seller is, hey, did I offend you? Question mark. Okay, because that's a weird subject line. That's strange, and it gets your attention. And you might have seen an email like that before. I've seen other marketers use it. It works. It gets a really good open rate, and that's what matters with emails. First, it has to get open, then it has to get read. Then you want them to take action on something. So maybe you try a shock style email that says, like, did I offend you? And then in the email body, explain, I'm super excited to make an offer on your property, and we talked a while ago, and I just want to make sure I haven't offended you because I haven't heard from you in a while. How are things going? Can I offer any assistance today? Give me a call if you have any questions, or email me, and maybe an email like that will help pull them off the wall. And it's not the same old you trying to pitch the ability to buy their house that you've probably done a bunch of times.
Couple quick thoughts on that. What Josh is talking about is in the subject line, right? So just to be sure, hey, did I offend you? Is in the subject line. That'll potentially help your open rate. Here's another thought. You mentioned you don't have their phone number. Skip trace them.
Yeah.
Now you might say, well, I did, and there wasn't a number. Well, do it again, because people's situations change and they leave a clue that they hadn't left before. And now we're able to locate them when maybe we weren't able to before. Some folks go off the grid and they're harder than heck to find, but then they go and they apply for a credit card, or they buy a vehicle, or they get, they do something that leaves a clue that we're able to pick up on, and boom, the guy you couldn't find using the skip trace, suddenly you can. And when you consider the cost of skip trace being as low as it is, it's worth doing again and again, especially if you're 10 months into this thing and you're looking to try to reach out in another way. Maybe we can get you that phone number now, and you can call or text. So,
yep. And knowing Serge, the guy who asked this question, and his ability to use virtual assistants, that sounds like a great task for a virtual assistant to go through and do. Wait until they get to X point and then go try to skip trace them, see if they can find some new contact information for them. So there you go, Serge.
All right, we're going to want to wrap it up here pretty soon. We're coming up on I think we're over our 90-minute mark. Did you note the time? Where are we, Josh? Are we over an hour and a half now?
We've got to be getting close. I think we're right at.
Okay.
We're getting close to it.
One more here from Mike. Says, I have an updated house in Miami, Florida with an after repair value as of last month of $550,000. In today's market, that would be what? Well, I think, like our friend Doug suggested, maybe 10 or 15% less. A lender is probably going to look at it that way, and that'll matter to your buyer, assuming they're getting a lender or getting a loan. It says it had been rented, and I was planning to sell it after the lease expired, which is the end of this month. What are your thoughts on selling at this time? I felt the timing to sell was right. I agree. Prior to this pandemic, I was in a selling mode because I knew that, the market was there was an adjustment coming. How, when, and why, I had no idea, but my gut was just hollering. And so, like I've said on these calls before, I've been liquidating, buying, I've had loads of buying old houses, and I've been liquidating them over the last 12 to 18 months. Mike says, I felt the timing was right, but was held up by my tenant's lease. But now here we are in this pandemic. So I think that's an interesting question. And I'm sure there's a number of folks on here that have rental properties that they may have for sale. I'm one. I've got this one that I told you about where I just upped the, and I had him do another thing too. If you were on earlier, you heard me, I said that the agent didn't suggest it. I went to him and I said, raise the commission to 7%. He said, what? I said, yeah. And make it 4% to the buyer's agent. You still get 3%, put 4% on the buyer's side, and make sure that's in the listing so that when a realtor is searching for maybe 4% listings, they find it easily, because realtors are just like anybody else. If they can make more money selling that house than that one, they're going to show that one a whole lot more often.
That's right.
The other thing I did was I asked the realtor to pull the house to cancel the listing and let it sit a few days and then relist it. Now, we've done some things. We went in and we retiled a bathroom, and we painted the entire interior of the house. And so there's what the new, description is going to include: freshly repainted and new bathroom, blah, blah, blah. So, I'm doing things that that I've been using, strategies I've been using for years to get a house to move without necessarily adjusting the price, although that's probably going to come. So, Mike, if you've been in this house quite a while, Miami's an extraordinarily, cyclical market. If you've had this house for any more than, 2 or 3 years or longer, you're probably way up in value. Maybe you consider cutting the price and get ahead. So we talked about Doug, with Doug, we talked about how sellers, and you've heard me say this, that there's a lag. All right. So there's some sort of an episode that causes the stock market to crash, like in 2008. And then that was a completely different set of reasons than today. And then the real estate market follows, but it takes time. There's a lag because sellers their minds are still set on what their house was worth, and they're not willing to admit it's no longer worth that. It's worth less. My point is, get out ahead of that now. Be the one that's realistic in a sea of unrealistic sellers and get your house sold now at more than you'll get if you're unrealistic and wait 3 or 4 or 6 months for sure. Right. So that's my advice on that. Josh, you got one more? You want to wrap it up?
I think we should wrap it for today. We're pushing over 1:30 now, so I think.
Okay. Yeah, we try to keep these two as close to an hour and a half as we can. By the way, first of all, thank you very much for being here. But here's a question. Please answer this for me. Do it in the comments below and like this video. Would you please like it and make a comment? Tell us who you are, where are you from, what city are you in? Put some comments in there. But here's a question I want you to answer. We had Doug Fath from Legacy Capital today, a hard money lender, as a guest. He was on for about 15 minutes. Clearly added a lot of value. Nice perspective. Yeah. Here's my question. Who or what, in what line of the business and what segment of the business would you like us to have on as a guest in the future? Because I can pick up the phone and call just about anybody and get them on here with us, but I don't want to do that randomly. I want your input on that. Who do you think we should bring on this call as a guest to offer their perspective? And if you don't have a name, well, tell me who that person is and what they do. Yeah. And I'm certain I know somebody, or Josh, between the two of us, we'll get somebody, in that. Yeah. Now, if you happen to be watching this on the replay on the blog at CameronDirect.com, same thing. Put it in the comments below. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And because your feedback is really what keeps us doing this, and is the sort of fuel for us to know that we're helping, and that's our goal, is to help. So thank you for joining us here, week 4 of the Real Estate Wealth Network Strategy Lab. We will be back again next Thursday at noon, live on Facebook, and then following that with the recording on the blog. Josh, how long does it generally take between the live on Facebook to get it on the blog? What's the lag on that?
45 minutes to an hour. We got Chelsea on our team, working hard and getting it pulled over from one of the others. So it's usually done pretty darn quick.
So this is what I'm saying right now is going to be on the blog in 45 minutes to an hour. That's great.
Right.
So if you're watching this on the blog, it's there. All of our past strategy labs are there. If you want to go back and look at, watch some of those, they're there on the blog. Just go to CameronDirect.com. And then on the top, there's row tabs. Just hit the blog. And, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time away from whatever else you might have been doing, especially if it was going to be binge watching Netflix. Stop it. Stop it. Let's start doing the things that are going to move us forward. Even if we're not exactly positive what they are, so what? Just start doing things, studying, looking at sellers, looking at buyers, and, keep your mind occupied, keep your thoughts and your eyes on the horizon, because things are changing very quickly, and there's unbelievable opportunity right around the corner for us, especially those of us that are willing to fail forward fast. I, for one, am super excited because I feel like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I just hope it's not the oncoming train. As far as maybe getting let out of our houses, I'm starting to hear rumblings here in New York about maybe the first week in May. We'll see. You know, other states, California's doing better, and you know, so at least they're talking about that now. And it does appear in some areas we've sort of crested the peak. Although I think there are other areas where we haven't even seen this thing really hit. I'm excited as all get out, and I'd like to think you can tell I'm working harder than I ever have, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm motivated as heck because I know I'm in some way I may be helping you, and I know in a very big way there's a huge opportunity right around the corner. And I and you, if you're willing to come along, and Josh for sure, we are going to make a bloody fortune over the next 6, 12, 24 months. Watch.
Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Let's do it together. Let's do it together. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us on the Real Estate Wealth Network Strategy Lab. Until then, keep up the good work. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, let me get to here and